Hey, this is Jason Skeesick. I'm the host of Spear and Clover podcast, as well as Spear and Clover coaching. In my episode of the Business Growth Architect Show, I'm going to reveal exactly how I identify employees and manage them so that they never want to quit. I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, fabulous person. Beate Chelette here, the Growth Architect. Welcome back to the Business Growth Architect Show, where we bring you cutting-edge business strategies from some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, business transformation experts, and visionaries who want to help you to scale your impact. Look for one tangible strategy that you can take back and implement right away. And now back to our guest. Welcome back. This is your host, Beate Chelette, and I'm here with Jason Skeesick. And we're going to talk today about something that I think is on everybody's mind right now. How are you going to keep employees that do not want to quit? Jason, welcome to the show.
Beate, it's so nice to talk to you again. I'm really excited about this podcast, in particular, this topic that we're talking about today.
Yeah, because how many conversations have you had in the last week alone about this very topic? I will tell you, everybody I talk to talks about what am I going to do with the people that I am hiring, wanting to hire, that I have, and that I want to prevent from leaving. But before we dive in, will you please introduce yourself to the audience and tell them what they need to know about you?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm Jason Skeesick. I am the host of the Spear and Clover podcast. And I also, I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I spent some time in the Army. Spent some time in financial services. I worked as a banker for one of the largest banks in the world, and corresponded at the same time. Opened up a small gym as a side project with my friends who I met who are also veterans. And then over the course of time, turned into a full-time entrepreneur and actually made my fortune or made my living as a gym owner, which is actually kind of what qualifies me for our conversation today. And that is, if I'm an expert of anything, Beate, it's running a professional team of people who don't get paid a lot of money. And so that requires a very different skill set than somebody if you're paying them a couple $100,000 a year. And I think there's some tips and tricks that we can go over today that will help you kind of strategically manage a team that will just not want to leave your organization.
I love that. And we're going to be diving all into that. But before we do that, rumor has it that you take ever so often a 40-pound backpack and even what's the word in the street? A tree trunk, and then
A
you run
log, yeah.
around.
Yeah, so I'm a
You
big
got to tell me the story of what that's all about before we dive in here, because I have never
sure.
heard this.
So in the military, this is the Spear and Clover. If you're watching on video, this is the Spear and Clover logo. And that's something that I came up with years before I came up with the idea of having it be a podcast and certainly not a coaching business. And what it is in the military, we do what's called rucking. And the way I like to say that is rucking is hiking for people in the military. We just put a backpack on and we would go ruck some amount of distance. And so I continue that tradition now. I believe strongly that as an entrepreneur and just as an adult, it's important to take what I call solo missions and just spend time clearing your head, thinking about your life, thinking about business or your relationships. And so I live here in the Indiana Dunes National Park. That's my backyard is the national park. And I have two Australian Shepherds. And one of my favorite things to do is throw on a 40-pound bag. And sometimes I'll carry a 40-pound log on my shoulder. And I'll just go ruck, 5, 10, 11 miles, 15 miles. We've done, over 20 miles in a day before. And one day, I was doing an 11-mile ruck with my dogs, the two Australian Shepherds, Ruby and Pearl. Shout out to Ruby and Pearl. And I got my head down and I'm feet moving. I'm going 11 miles. I got 80 pounds of weight on me, as I mentioned. And I'm just pushing hard as I can towards my goals. The dogs, they're good girls. They're running out into the woods and then they come back and check on me. And then they're running out into the woods and they come back and check on me. And then they're rolling around in the grass and then they come back and check on me. And in an instant, in that moment, I realized at my best, that's how I go through life. I'm hard charging towards my goals. I'm military mindset is one of my core values, but I'm also spirit of the puppy. I'm playful. I'm excited. I'm learning new things. I'm meeting new people, and I'm taking time to appreciate life as it happens, not just look forward to some distant point in the future. And so that day was a very important day in my life. And it was several years ago before I decided to start the podcast or certainly the coaching company.
I love that. And that's why I wanted you to tell the story, because I
Yeah.
think that there is a pretty important principle that knowing you, you're going to take us a little bit deeper. And so let's
Yeah.
talk about strategy. And we're talking about, retaining people and building like a world-class team that you don't pay a lot, but that are deeply dedicated to your vision and your mission. So talk to us about how do you use strategy in that sense in your business?
So I know that we're going to keep this focused on employment, but it would be poor. It would be a bad idea for me to not mention at least. I have very strong core values and a very strong mission that I took time to reveal through a long process, and it's something
Yeah,
that I
go
help
ahead.
entrepreneurs to do.
Dive
Well,
in. Dive
that's
in.
I can leave it at that. I'm just saying that I have very important core values. These are commonly used in my meetings with my staff. They're commonly used when we talk about our goals. Is this taking us towards our mission? Is this in line with our core values? But more importantly, Beate, when we talk about the strategy of how I identify clients, there's really three things. It's one, whenever possible, I try to leverage relationships and I draft employees rather than what I call trade for employees. So if you think like a sports team, you can either draft a young talent and then train them up within your organization, or you can trade with another professional organization and get a known quantity of a person. And in my experience, especially with somebody with strong core values, I look for the most passionate of my clients or of my friends that I know are going to be a good cultural fit. And then I try to find a place where I can put them and train them into that role, if possible. If not possible, if I do go outbound and look for a trade from another company, what I try to do is I actually format my entire interview and onboarding process in line with my core values and mission statement. So a lot of organizations we'll have tests like personality tests, like DISC tests, which are great. And they'll do things like, have them come in for a half day, like a super days. Those are called when you're in school. And those are very effective tools. But ultimately, the most important thing that dictates, in my opinion, whether or not somebody is going to be successful in our organization is if they're going to love working at your organization. And so the way I try to do that is, I mentioned military mindset and spirit of the puppy. When I'm doing an interview, I'm actually asking them questions designed to extract whether or not they fit those things. And so I couldn't just come out and say, hey, do you think, Beate, that you're spirit of the puppy? You'd go like, yeah, if you even understood what that meant. What I might do is say, talk to me about what you were like when you were like 5 years old, and just listen to what they say. Were they disciplined and playing with Legos, or were they climbing off the walls and going out and running around and painting their face with mud? That's the type of person that maybe would fit in my organization better than, let's say, at JP Morgan Chase or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I can answer that. I was the one who took, I'm from Germany, so we have these
Yeah.
Lebkuchen boxes, right,
Uh-huh.
from Nuremberg, and we got a lot of these boxes as gifts. And so I would take these, and because I never got this great doll house, the Barbie doll house that I wanted, so I built one by myself in
Yeah.
a Lebkuchen box, right?
Wow.
So that would be something you would wanted to hear, is that
Yeah.
um because that shows to you what are you taking away? If I tell you that, what are you taking away? Let's make it real for the audience.
Well, ingenuity for starters. I mean, you're creating something that didn't exist before. So you, like me, are an entrepreneur, and I like to say that visionary entrepreneurs are people who see the world as it could be, and we can't help but take action. And that's exactly what you were doing, even as a young kid. And I could tell you stories very similar of mine. I was a little more savage than that, but I was definitely. I was setting traps in the backyard and
Ooh.
creating all sorts of scenarios and stuff. But what I wasn't doing was sitting behind the television or any of those things that maybe would be not as good of answers, right?
Yeah, that I love that. Okay. So now you are using strategy to get to a to get to an information, and you reverse engineered your questions so that you get to the type of answers you're looking for. So take me through that a little bit further. So do you have like 10 questions you want answered that are in line with your core values? And is there any trick that you can share with the audience before we go in your favorite strategy?
Yeah, so very much like the way I would write copy. When I write copy for an ad, I actually will do exercises where I'll say, what is the benefit? Shout out to Alex Hormozy, who I learned this from, as a former mentor of mine. What is the benefit that I'm selling? My benefit is I'm selling weight loss, or in this case, for an employee, the benefit I would be looking at, the tier one thing is I want someone who is spirit of the puppy, let's just say. And then I would say, what is the benefit of the benefit? So I would say, spirit of the puppy, how were they as children? That'll tell me what their spirit is like, what they were like. You were born with this trait, right? And so what I'll do is every degree that I can go down will dig me deeper into that. And so I might say, if I were to give you pillows in a fort and a blankets right now, how quickly would you make a fort, and where would it go, and how would it look? And if that person can, at a moment's notice, drop that professional, they got a tie on, they got their little portfolio. If they can drop that and go, oh my gosh, I can do this, I could do that. I think over there would be really cool. We could crawl underneath the two desks. That's somebody that I can have fun with. That's somebody I could go on a trip with. That's somebody that I can see being creative and working well in our environment. Don't get me wrong, our organization is not all puppies, right? So we have to go to the other stuff as well. But that's the example that I've been using. So, the other things I might want to find out is, how they achieve goals when there's nobody, keeping them on pace and things like that. But the biggest thing is to first identify if their core value fits, and then the next step is to introduce them to the team, have them spend time with me and as well as people on the team, and then get a read from them if that person would even enjoy being in the culture that we all know we share.
I like that a lot. So, for the listener, again, pointing out reverse engineer your questions based up on what you want to achieve. I like, Jason, that you said that there is a playful element because that is part of your core values. And then you have your more business type questions, your more serious questions. So you reverse engineer those. So it is, I like the idea that if I have, let's say, 3 to 5 core values and I want to get to the answer of the person I'm interviewing, how do I get to that? Is I take the core value and I say, what do I need to ask to have them tell me what their playfulness is? Like one of the things that's important to us is keeping your word, being a person of honor. Are you keeping your word to yourself? So I think that there is a lot in there to say instead of these standard interview questions, which I probably don't think work all that well anymore because there's people who train you for these types of questions. So would you then say that your interview questions are a little bit more unusual?
Yeah, and I would just say they're less overt, right? And so a great example was the honor and keeping your word. If I ask you in an interview, are you honorable and do you keep your word? Well,
Everybody's gonna say
certainly
yes.
everyone is going to say yes. I mean, they'd be foolish not to. But what I might do is I might ask them a question where they may not realize that's the goal of the question. And I'm seeing if I can come up with one off the top of my head. But for instance, I might say, talk to me about a time where you disagreed with your former employer. And I want to hear what they say. Do they tell me that, well, my employer was, again, depends on the person, right? But my employer was wrong about this thing. And so I took action and saved the day and did all these things. Is that the honorable answer? It's up to you. Or do they say, well, it was important to me that I was straightforward with them. So I leveled with them. I said, guys, you asked me to do X, Y, and Z, but I believe strongly that A, B, and C is correct, and here's why. And then we moved forward. That to me would be the preferable answer. Again, I'm just coming up with that off the top of my head, but the idea would be to remove your question by at least 1 degree from sort of the overt coming straight out and asking them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that there's probably a little bit of a skill that goes into it, but I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, especially in an environment right like this right now, that having a conversation that's not so trite is probably refreshing and shows that how you set yourself as potential employer apart from everyone else, because everybody else goes and Googles interview questions,
Yeah,
or how does Google interview people, or how does Netflix interview people, and then they try to take these things that work for other companies that have different values and different systems, and they try to make that work for them, and then they're surprised that they're not attracting the same kind of person that they really need. I can see how in a gym somebody needs to be playful, because people are so upset about
yeah,
their appearance, or
yeah.
about the muffin tops, or discouraged about, their lack of results, or aging, and their body, just goes, the body just does what the body does when you get older, and that's hard for some of us, right? I mean, my
Yeah,
body suddenly doesn't look like when I was 20. So I would want that playfulness in somebody who's gonna say, you know what, let's make it fun. Let's not terrorize you with weights. Let's not make it look like, you're slaving away. But what can we do that
yeah.
this exercise is actually enjoyment for you, and you come back, and because that's retention for you, correct?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but there was a time, it was 2019, we did 52 social events in 52 weeks. We did an event every week on average. We were doing RV trips, we were doing skiing trips, we were doing tie dyeing our branded t shirts. And there was a time where I looked at my wife and I go, the only thing stopping people from joining is they have to do CrossFit because it's hard. And so so the community and the culture around it. And if you're listening to this, I don't think this is exclusive to CrossFit, but it is certainly indicative of CrossFit. You see this in yoga studios. You see this in really great small organizations. Let's not forget that 90% of companies in America are small businesses, and 88% of those have less than 20 employees. And if you can have less than 20 employees and you're not a tribe that's tight together on a mission trying to change the world, or at least your little slice of it, then you're doing something wrong. And I think that's really the nugget of where strategically we can start to have these tribal type organizations where we're all aligned, we're all in the same boat, and we're all rowing as hard as we can in the same direction.
Excellent. Well, I love that. So our next question is going to be about what your favorite strategy is. So stay put.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after this message. Thank you so much for listening to the show. This is Beate, the growth architect. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for your time. Have you ever wondered why your business is not growing as quickly as you would like it to be? Well, you may have a business growth blocker. And if you'd like to find out what that business growth blocker is, go and take our brand new quiz at growthblockerquiz.com. And in only a few minutes, you're not just going to find out what that blocker is, but also what to do about it. Again, go to growthblockerquiz.com. And now back to the show. Welcome back. This is Beate, and we are on the call here with Jason Skeesick and talking about strategy. So, Jason, we've talked a lot about how to, use strategy to attract the right employees and how to interview them. Now, tell us, what is your favorite strategy to create that tight tribe of employees that never want to quit?
I'm so glad you asked me that. So, you mentioned something earlier that I want to call back to, and it was something about a refreshing given the times. And so, it's worth noting, COVID in 2020 was a huge. I don't think it was a change in our culture, but it was a huge fast forward button for what technology and the way things have gone in our working lives has gone over the last 10 years, and that is technology and decentralization has allowed us to make so many more choices than just making the most money as a career choice. And so you can live in different places, you can have remote work opportunities, you can have flexible schedules. 2020 only hit the fast forward button on that. The problem is, I don't think the HR departments were hit the fast forward button as well. right? And so because of
Sorry,
that,
I didn't mean to
no,
laugh
that's
like that.
okay. I mean, that was a good reaction, right? But because of that, we still are trying to throw money at a problem that you can't buy. And I know that because I didn't lose any employees, and my average employee was making $300 or $400 a month with us. Do you see what I mean? And so because of that, what really you need to do if you want to align your tribe is include them, provide them with clarity and context of where you're guiding this ship, and allow them to have some say as to where the ship is going as well. And so when we would set our big, hairy, audacious goals for the year, I would sit in a room with my staff, and I would say, "What do we want to do this year?" And they would say, "I don't know. I'd like to help 500 people to lose weight, or I'd like to do this. And what are we going to do if we achieve that goal?" I don't know. What should we do? Well, I don't know. You guys are the fuel for my rocket ship. Let me be the fuel for your rocket ship. What would be the craziest thing you could imagine we could do? Let's all go to Hawaii. Beate, I took my team to Hawaii. I
Oh
took my
wow.
team to Hawaii in early 2019 because in 2018, we decided if we hit these numbers, they were revenue based numbers, we're going to take you to Hawaii. And I can tell you candidly, we beat that number by like $175,000, and it was easy. Why? Because we set a big, hairy, audacious goal that they were a part of. And then we reverse engineered that into an achievable quarterly goal 4 times and an achievable monthly goal 3 times per quarter, which told them exactly what they needed to do every week in order to get to the Hall of Fame at the end of that year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like this idea of the getting people involved. Now, I know that a lot of people say they do that,
Yeah.
and they say that it is going to be the goal. And then about 3 months into this 1 year goal, they go, "Oh, that's not working. We're going to have to shift." And this is so, this goes back to what I said, keeping your word. I think this is where a lot of the trust, and again, jump in here if this is not aligned here. But this is where I think a lot goes wrong is if you say we hit this, and if that goal is met, you're going. But then to say, I probably over promised that, I told you I was going to take you to the conference in New York, but I ran the numbers. It's probably more than I should have done. And withdrawing these things that you had promised, what happens when you do not keep your word as the boss, when you make such a claim?
That's when you trade in the keys and you sell your business because you're no longer authentically leading your tribe. I just don't think that it's a sustainable practice to now. If you must make changes, if something happens, 2020, we were launching a business in 2020. We were supposed to open in February of 2020, and then March of 2020 came around, and we had just opened, and we had to close that business. Well, of course, there are things that need to happen. But when you have a team that feels like they have a say and they're in the trenches with you and you're in the trenches with them fighting through it, it's much easier to adapt on the fly. But I want to give an example because I did kind of run over that real quick. And we're not talking about goal setting today. But when I set goals, if I want a big, hairy goal, let's just say $1 million, the quarterly goal isn't 250,000, it's 270,000. And the monthly goal to get there is, oh my gosh, you're going to test me here. Is it 70? It's not 70,000. It's 80,000. That way, I want to build in loss. I want to build in that we didn't hit our goal 1 month, or we didn't hit our goal 1 quarter, and we can still easily hit our annual goal, or what have you. Because do you know what happens when somebody has a mountain of small losses? You set these big goals that you never meet. What do we call somebody that loses all the time? We call them a loser, Beate, and I don't want to lead a team full of losers. And I certainly don't want to condition my team that that's our ethos.
Oh, that's so powerful. I never thought about it like that, but you overshoot by on purpose. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
and then if you overshoot, then if a couple of throws are short, then you don't need to worry about it because you still have enough. And that was like, well, we hit in the reserve here, and we're still good, so it's much better for morale. And that way, I think as a leader, you also don't have to go in, as you said, condition them as losers, um, and tell them that they didn't meet the goal, because that, Why would I subject myself to that if I don't have to?
Yeah, I mean, not to cut you off, but I learned this as a trainer. It's I'm starting to realize more and more that being a trainer and being a coach is not a deficit as an entrepreneur now. As I start to get bigger and bigger influence, it's actually been great. I have clients. My job as a CrossFit coach, I used to describe it like this. My job as a CrossFit coach is to help you to do something you used to think was impossible. People would come in and say, I can't do a handstand. And then 3 months later, they're upside down. And so I remember one client I had, Krista, was one of my favorite clients ever. And she couldn't even squat with no weight. She could not squat down. And so I had her literally taking baby steps. I would walk her over to the stairs in the gym, and she would take a step up and a step down and a step up and a step down. And then over time, it was a little deeper. And over time, it was a little deeper. And now to this day, she's a very fit person who's quite strong and has done all these amazing things. But it's because she came in having never had a physical culture. She came in having never done sports or won at anything. Nobody had ever looked at her and said, I want to pick you first. But we took somebody who had a mountain of losses that they had sat on their whole life for no reason, mind you, only because she had been playing by the wrong metrics. And we taught her that by making little tiny wins every single day, you're going to be sitting on a mountain of wins. And Beate, what do we call somebody sitting on a mountain of wins?
A winner.
You are right. Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. One of my favorite books is Darren Hardy's Compound Effect, and it's very much like that, where it's you if you were to look, yeah, I mean, I hate the saying, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
Who would want to eat an elephant? Thank you very much. But I that's just so wrong. But I like the idea of saying, how do we get there in small steps and reverse engineer and break it down? I mean, that's what we do as strategists.
Hmm.
If we say to somebody, how do you build your business? How do we develop these growth strategies? It only works if we take that goal and then we have the main strategy and we have the subset of strategies that then individually are broken down so that they can be executable in small steps. But once you know what the big goal is, it's easy for people like you and me to reverse engineer it because that's how our brain works. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of people get carried away to look at the end goal and say, no chance in the world I'm going to make that, right? No chance in the world I'm, with chronic migraines, I could do X, Y, or Z, or with my bad back or with my, knee injury, could I X, Y, and Z? And then you find 50 examples of people who've done exactly that. And then you look like an idiot because you go, well, so it must be possible. If it's possible, it must be possible for me. And then the question is not can I, but how can I?
Yeah, and
So
that takes being able to stand aside from yourself and look at
yeah.
yourself more objectively. And that's something that I think people like you and I share is I remember I'll never forget the moment I knew that I could be an entrepreneur. I had just gotten out of the army and I was standing at a very busy intersection in Chicago that's got a lot of small businesses, and I just looked down the street and I could see probably 150 small businesses. And I said there's no way that behind 150 doors is somebody smarter than me. There's just no way. And so I knew then that I could have a business. And ever since then, I've just kind of thought back to that moment.
What a sassy thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. I was talking to somebody the other day in a mentoring session, and I said to him, you got definitely a little bit of cocky here. And he looks at me and says, I'm really not trying to. I said, no, I
Yeah.
said, you got to use that because
Yeah.
there's just definitely something that stands out. I like that, so saying to you, I like that kind of confidence
Oh,
because
good.
I think it makes you stand out from other people and it becomes contagious. And that's what I want the audience really to hear and take away from this interview is that here's somebody who went to the army, who has been who's been living by a code of being told what to do and executing that. And then you went out and you took the best of what you have learned. And then somehow you managed to become the leader and take the best of and transfer that into being an entrepreneur, making money, helping other people. That's something to be proud of. So, bravo to that.
That's so kind of you. Thank you so much, Beata.
My pleasure. All right, so we are closing out our interview. So, how can our listeners find out more about you, Jason? get a piece of you and maybe be part of what you do?
Well, there is a lot of me to go around. I love talking to entrepreneurs. I have never been on a phone call, including this one, especially this one, with an entrepreneur where I didn't get off with more energy than I had before. So just reach out to me. I'm Jason Skeesick, no spaces, on Instagram. I'm Spear and Clover on Instagram. And you can reach me at jason@spearandclover.com for email. I'm very easy to find, and I love meeting new people. If there's anything that I can do to help you, I am happy to do so.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It was an absolute blast.
Oh, thank you so much, Beate.
And that's it for us today. Thank you for listening and watching the Business Growth Architect Show. I enjoyed having you here. And for accountability, just take one of the strategies that you have heard, one thing that you can implement in your business immediately. Please leave comments. Don't forget to like and share this show. And if you have any questions about business, please put them in the comments. We are here for you. We're here to support you and help you to grow, build, and scale your own business. For more advice, please check out our website in the show notes below. Thank you again. This is Beate Chelette, the Growth Architect, and goodbye.